Hey everybody, good morning, good Monday morning. Well, almost afternoon here. I am popping in, as promised. This week is going to be my book launch week, and I'm going to be sending out signed copies of this book at a very good deal. Limited time. So what I'm going to do is pop in for a few minutes every day, have just a brief little topic on my table of contents. I'm gonna kind of use the chapter titles. Today's title is Holy Grief, I Didn't See This Coming. So I want to take a few minutes and kind of chat about that title. It might not be exactly what's written in the book. It might just kind of apply to what's going on in today's world. So again, my first chapter is Holy Grief, I Didn't See This Coming. This title seems very fitting when we suddenly lose someone that we weren't expecting. It's also very fitting for COVID-19. The big thing we are dealing with right now, and we are all being impacted by this globally, all of us, everyone in the world. Sometimes it feels very hopeless, and we just don't know how to get out of this feeling of feeling hopeless. Sometimes we have to look back at times in our lives where we felt this way, and it became a part of our history. And COVID-19 is going to be a part of our history too someday, and hopefully someday soon, within the next 6 months, hopefully even sooner. So we're going to all look back at this as a part of our history. I look back at some times in my own life where I had some difficult times. And I lost my late spouse, Barry, to mental illness almost 10 years ago now. I say mental illness because that's really what took his life and took him from me and from our family. He died by suicide, but it was the mental illness that took his life. I found him February 11, 2011. And he had lost all hope of getting better. And this was the only thing that he could see that was going to help get away from the pain. I was blindsided. Holy grief, I did not see this coming. And that's the title of the first chapter of the book. After a few years of sorting myself out and finding my path, I decided to write a book titled It's My Grief and I'll Cry If I Want to. Also very fitting. I took baby steps along the way. The first step was making a decision to make some changes to where my life was headed. After my loss and my 6-figure job that I no longer had because it just didn't seem to feel or had the same meaning to me anymore, I was a business executive development person in the Toronto area for, 7 years. And I did work my way up to making 6 figures. Although there was about 8 years earlier, I was a struggling single mom. And I needed to make some major changes or spend my life in poverty, struggling to feed my children and wondering where the next grocery order was going to come from. Aside from losing Barry to suicide, I had another loss previous to that. I lost my first husband to addiction of alcohol and drugs. He did not die physically, but the man that I married no longer existed. So he was gone, the person that I thought I was going to spend my life with. I made changes then, at that time, in my education and in my job focused. And so somewhere inside me, I knew I had the strength to do it again. And sometimes we have to look back at times in our past, which are now part of history, and how we can use those things that we learned at that time and move forward. Only this time when Barry died, I was starting over in my mid-40s. I'm pretty close to my mid-50s now, so we're looking back close to 10 years ago. And I had an empty nest. Actually, my nest just emptied at that time when I decided to pack up and move back to my home city. I'm back in Ontario now with my daughters who stayed behind, but at that time I had moved back to my home city, Halifax. It was very difficult after I lost Barry because I felt like I just didn't have the same emotional support. He was kind of my cheerleader, my career, and really supported my my getting ahead and doing really well financially. So this time I was on my own. I didn't have my girls physically with me. They were great over the phone, but for the most part, I was pretty much on my own. So it took a little more being my own cheerleader, I guess. Even though I still believed that Barry was still my cheerleader in the sky, but I had to really keep motivated myself, and that was really hard. But I did it. It wasn't easy. Not at all. But it felt good that each day I could make some sort of baby step towards some kind of life of promise instead of a life that was slowly sinking and going nowhere. So I tried to focus on what it was I was going to do with my life and where I was going to go after my loss, after I was an empty nest, had an empty nest in my home, and was living in a condo. I wasn't even in our home anymore. I was living in a condo by myself. So it was a lot of changes at that time. But now I can look back at a piece of my history, and I believe that we're going to do the same with COVID. Even though we're talking on a global scale and I'm comparing it to my personal story, we can take our personal stories and look back at history and how it becomes a piece of our history and how we can learn from it, grow from it, and move on. And I believe that we're going to do the same thing with COVID-19. So change equals fear for many of us. And many of us are very fearful right now because of the changes that are going on a daily basis, and the numbers that are going higher and higher every day, especially here in our area of Ontario. I heard this morning that we were up to 700 cases in Ontario, which is not good news for us, but we need to keep pushing forward, and we need to keep our mask on, keep washing our hands, and doing everything we can do to stop the spread of COVID. Even if we don't want to do it, we have to do it anyways, for ourselves, for our family, for our community, and for our province, and for our country. Now, when we're making changes, and it's time to kind of move forward, we look at what our pros and our cons are, kind of remove the fear from it, remove the fear from that equation. And if our pros are much higher than our cons, then our answers are right in front of us. Sometimes we just have to remove that fear. If it's the other way around, our cons are much higher, then we really need to look at that as well and talk to a trusted friend or coach or mentor, somebody that you trust before making any major decisions. And it's great to be able to bounce ideas. So when I was training to be a certified grief coach, I also had my own coach, and we were told at that time that every coach needs a coach, and very true. So I really leaned on my own coach at the time. So just over the last couple of years, I have decided to write a book, and the hardest part for me was writing my book and opening up the most vulnerable parts of my life and my personal story. We are very fearful of opening up because we're so afraid of what people are going to think of us. We're afraid of being a failure. It's very scary to allow ourselves to become vulnerable. And I was scared to death, like literally scared to death. Not scared to death about writing the book. I found that to be very therapeutic, actually. It was a way of releasing a lot of thoughts and fears and things that I had going on inside me over a number of years, and that part was good. But to know that I was writing this down and that other people, family members, friends, people that have known me will be reading this book too. So that part was very scary. I remember many years ago when I accepted an Adult Learners Award at Mount St. Vincent University in 2001. The dean said to me that day, because my speech I titled out of nowhere, because I didn't really know I was supposed to do a speech, but it was, everyone has a story. And it's so true. We all have a story within us. And so that kind of stuck with me. And the dean said after I said my little unprepared speech that, you know, someday maybe you may be writing a book. And it never really left me. That little thought planted that little seed, and this is a good example of a seed. Sometimes it only takes this tiny little seed planted in the back of your brain. And I kind of call them the aha moments. Like, you know, when you kind of grab onto something, it just becomes an aha moment. And that seed, you can grow it. It might take a long time to grow it. Look how long it takes to grow a tree. Or maybe it could take a short time to grow it, like a plant in your house. The important thing is that we continue to focus on growing and growing that little seed that's planted inside of us. And know that you are enough. And you can do it. Just little baby steps by baby steps. And try not to get too overwhelmed just every day. Just like, what am I going to do today to water my seed? You know, do something every day to make sure you water your seed and keep your tree or your plant alive. So, as part of my kickoff special, I'm going to be signing these books and sending them out. And I'm going to be doing it at a really low price of $9.95, which is like half the price of what's on Amazon. And there'll be a small shipping charge of $5, and that's still half the price of what's on Amazon. So in order to order, you can go to my website and you'll see the special on there for $9.95. So it's griefreliefcoaching.ca. And if some of you that have already been following me want to share this post, your name is going to go back in the jar. I don't care if it's been in there 10 times already for my win a book draw on Friday. So don't forget to share the post so I can put your name in my jar and it stays there. So every Friday as I'm going through this launch that I'll be doing over the next few weeks, I'm going to be sending out a free book. And again, my website, griefreliefcoaching.ca. And I think I put this one up, order special is $9.95. All right, so thanks again for listening. See you tomorrow. And tomorrow's chapter title is Be Patient, I'm Grieving. See you then. Thanks.